Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been listening to the debate. Today, Omaha Public Schools had a 2-hour late start, so that means Mom had a 2-hour late start, getting to work too. But I've been listening to the debate, and after hearing what I've heard, although I still have questions, and even the purpose or the effect of the bill still isn't really clear to me, because I don't know if all of the proponents of the bill, if it's clear to them either, but this isn't my wheelhouse or area of expertise anyway, so I really want to be sure that I understand what this is before I vote to advance it. But from what I've heard so far, it's a firm no for me. If the concern is that all these businesses have to have a safety commission, none of them do, so let's remove that requirement so that it's not mandatory, and if they want to, they still can, so this is good for business, et cetera. Maybe the reform needs to be to which businesses are required to have a safety commission. I mean, my business doesn't have a safety commission. I have 3 part-time employees that work regularly and maybe 5 other employees that work semi-regularly. We don't have a safety committee. If I'm required to have a safety committee, that's something I guess I need to look at. But if the concern is that small businesses or certain types of businesses or businesses that don't work with certain types of equipment or have safety hazards for employees shouldn't be wrapped up in this regulation, then maybe that's something else to reform on its own in a different way with language that doesn't cover all businesses. It doesn't cover businesses that operate in the cases like Senator Quick was saying, when people are getting these serious life-threatening injuries or sometimes even death, deadly injuries on the job, which we know does happen in Nebraska. Another big concern I have is page 12-911, which Senator Dungan brought up on his first time on the mic when I was listening, which seems to be removing kind of like a whistleblower protection, where it says, no person with a reasonable cause to believe the truth of the information, meaning like a report, shall be liable to civil liability for libel, slander, any other relevant tort, et cetera, et cetera. So it worries me if we're having employees who are then discouraged from reporting violations. And also the insistence that we don't need any of this because OSHA provides regulations, because people are already under these regulations from the federal government and OSHA and other requirements. OSHA is being decimated right now by the Trump administration. Regulations are being slashed. People are not being appointed to key roles to give oversight. People are being appointed to roles to give oversight who are political appointees, who don't have any experience in OSHA or workplace safety or anything. And I don't see a reason that that trend won't continue in federal government for the foreseeable future. And as Donald Trump always says, we're going to kick it to the states. We're going to leave it up to the states. And I think that in Nebraska, state lawmakers in Nebraska are some of the most powerful state lawmakers in the country for sure, just because of the nature of our legislature here. And so we have such a responsibility as a state to keep those protections in place for employees because they're being decimated everywhere else. And so I think that we need to look at these cutbacks to worker safety in the bigger context of what's happening federally as well. And see how they're getting decimated at the federal level and maybe decide that it wouldn't be a good thing if we were a part of that too, because then what safety measures are going to remain? I also, I just want to share, I don't come in here to stand up for business. I think that all the rest of you do a fine job of that. I think the federal government does a fine job of that, slashing regulations at the cost of workers. I think the Department of Labor in the last 3 or 4 years has done a fine job of putting business owners before workers. I think that our tax policy does a fine job of putting business owners before workers. And the whole lobby is full of people standing up for business interests. But when it comes time to stand up for the people who actually make the money for those businesses, that make it possible for people like Senator Moser, Senator Raybould, me, to buy a home, put food on the table, have childcare, all the things that I need to live my life, that's because of my workers. Thank you, Mr. President.
That's your time, and you're next in the queue.
Thank you. And so, I think it's important that we have people in the legislature putting those workers first, above business interests, because there needs to be a balance of experience in lawmaking, but also in the interests that we're serving. I'm really concerned by a pattern of rhetoric that I hear in this legislature from Senator Raybould, from Senator Hansen, of people saying things like, whatever bill it is that affects business, like, I'm a business owner and we give our employees time off, we give our employees paid leave. Therefore, government should not mandate any paid leave or time off for employees because I do it and I'm a good business owner and I trust business owners. Don't you trust business owners? Don't you trust them to do the right thing? I do the right thing. So everybody must do the right thing. Therefore, we don't need a law. Or I'm a business owner and I pay my employees a fair wage. Therefore, we don't need to mandate a fair wage for all business owners. Or I care about safety. It's not in my interest for a customer to slip and fall or for a worker to have an injury. Therefore, we don't need any protections for, and I know you're not saying we don't need any protections, but do you hear yourselves? Like, do you hear how tone deaf that is? Yes, congratulations on being the best business owner. I wish I could mail you a trophy if you let me know your address, but that's not how it works for every business. And Senator Hansen said, well, if there's bad businesses that aren't standing up for the safety of their workers, I'd like to know who they are. Yeah, I could tell you many. We could stand under the balcony, I could tell you many, many. Why? Because I'm friends with workers. Because after I leave here, I go get drinks, I go out to dinner, I have them come by my shop and we chat, and I hear all kinds of stories about bad business practices. They ask me for advice since I came in here in 2019. What can I do? How can I make a claim against my employer? How can I make a complaint to the Department of Labor? I've brought several bills over my time trying to increase protections for those workers who do not feel safe reporting workplace safety violations or wage theft or time theft or anything else like that, because those protections have been eroded for them little by little by people like us, both in state government and federal government. So to say, well, why don't you just say who they are? Well, because then I'm opening myself up for, a slander accusation or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's not realistic. That's not realistic. Just as it's not realistic to say, I pay my workers a fair wage, I give them time off, and my workplace is safe, therefore we don't need regulations. So, that's my rant. But my concern about the bill is that if the concern is that Megan's little pencil shop and Senator Moser's instrument shop doesn't need to have a safety committee, maybe that's something to carve out a little bit more specifically with different language and not this kind of catch-all language that then takes away whistleblower protections, then takes away funding, things like that. Oh, and one other thing. Senator Hansen doing a rhetorical game of saying, oh, well, we could say that if you're against this bill, then you're against raising the wages, because maybe some of the money saved by these business owners, now that they don't have to have a committee, could have been applied, could have gone to raising the wages. I'll give $1,000 to any business owner that would come up and tell me, oh my God, we eliminated our safety committee and now everybody's getting a raise. That's not happening. I would like to see at the Barnwood company or the chiropractor company if anybody's getting a wage raise because we don't have to have a 20-minute meeting every year about where the extension cord is or whatever. So, I'm trying to be a serious person, and I just ask that you do the same. And I do think this bill has some remaining problems and questions. Thank you, Mr. President.